Dr. Jazz.
I listened the other day to one, I think it was pre-corona, with Henry Lauter. You played some standards with Ben Crossland trio.
Oh, crumbs! Yeah, it was. I know what that is. Ben's put something up online. Yeah, it's we were just doing a guest night spot. You know, the traditional, as we know in London, where you go and play with the local rhythm section.
Yeah, exactly.
He's up in sort of in Huddersfield way in the north of England, and Henry and I were guests for the night. So it's the usual. You know, you turn up in the afternoon. I mean, we sort of know Ben, and you turn up with a few bits of paper and a list of standards, and you work something out, and that's what that evening was about. Yeah,
it was beautiful to hear you play with Henry. I mean,
Henry's lovely. I mean, I'm very close friends with Henry. We keep in touch, although, you know, obviously we do different things and different bands and all, but we do play together as well. But we've been lifelong friends. So and Henry's 80 this year.
I know. I've done this talk with him like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right, you've done it. You know, yeah.
So such a nice guy. So, but I wanted to ask you, like, when do you go back with Henry? I know you guys probably did like already early 70s some records together, and
well, probably a bit before that. I can't remember. I'm not great with dates because I've never been of any kind of dates. I'm just not a person who remembers dates very well. But I go back to when I came off. I worked on a liner for a year.
Oh wow, really?
I did the Queen Mary for a year, 1960.
Oh wow, man!
Which was, you know, to get to New York and back. So that was an incredible year for all sorts of it, as you can imagine. It was a great year musically.
Which year was that?
1967. It's the year Coltrane died.
And then you went to New York at that year.
I was the whole of that year. I was in and out, you know, on the Mary, because I worked on the line. So every 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, you were there for a couple of nights. We were there for stay overnight. You got 48 hours docking. I mean, nowadays the ships go in and out. The ones that are left, but at that time, you get a great big row of liners, transatlantic line, the Queen Mary, the France. Yeah. Oh, there's a big Italian one. Sometimes they were all in, and you docked on 52nd Street. How about that? That's where you
seriously.
It's serious. Right at the bottom of 52nd Street is where you got off the ship. But I mean, before I get into that, you asked me a question about Henry. So I met Henry after that. There was a guy ran a band in London called Graham Collier.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so Graham ran this band, which I did, and John Marshall, the drummer, was in it. Harry Beckett, trumpet player. Yeah. Carl Jenkins, who's now is a really well-known sort of writer and orchestrator. Anyway, and he used to enlarge this band now and again, and so to a 12-piece. I met Henry around that time, and then we did some gigs with a large band, and he lived near me in North London. So we sort of teamed up, as you do. You meet like minds, and we got together with families and stuff, and. But also then, you know, like carrying on from that, I started doing things with John Taylor, and we had a sextet with Ken Wheeler, Chris Pine, trombone player.
I love that band,
Tony Levin and stuff. And then I'd met Kenny by then, and I started doing a few things with Ken's big band and stuff, broadcasts. And so I sort of started to see Henry a lot, you know. And he was just sort of one of those guys that was around London. So we talked about it the other day, is that going back to those years, so even before 67, I mean, I played in the original National Youth Jazz Orchestra, the NIJO, the very first one, you know. So, and it was very strange, you know, you sort of knew everybody that played jazz or played an instrument, because it was such an unpopular music.
Especially, the horns, not so many, right?
I mean, when I was at school and I wanted to learn a saxophone, the kids used to laugh at me, you know, what's that thing? Because it was the, and then all the Beatles, and that was the music of the day. So it was very sort of not a cool thing to be doing. But now you walk up any road anywhere, and every 3 doors you hear a saxophone player. You know,
true.
But you know, it wasn't in those days. And And so the number of people that played or played jazz, it was an incredibly small community, and you knew everybody, and you actually knew people by sound. You know, you could recognize everybody. You sort of,
Yeah.
It's quite different. Anyway, so that's where I met Henry, and so that's right after coming off of this boat, which I was what, 17 going on 18 years old in 67 when I went on this ship, you know, which was quite something. I mean, for me, it was about leaving home and
yeah, sure.
you know, I've been brought up on a council house estate in London, just outside, not seen very much. Never met anybody really that liked jazz. There was nobody, only my art teacher at school and my German teacher. Funny enough, two teachers, one German teacher played piano, the art teacher played baritone saxophone, and he looked a bit like Jerry Mulligan. But they were, it was very conservative schools. They never brought their music into school. It wasn't sort of frowned on, you know. The only music lessons were classical lessons.
Yeah,
etc. Anyway, so
wow.
And yeah, that's where I came from, on this estate. Then we moved back more into central London with my parents into another council place, and I got a job in I was 15 and I was at school, and I got a job in a local palais, in a dance hall.
Okay, yeah.
Huge dance hall. I mean, this place held about 3,000 people. This is the days when these are the days when these massive halls. So like Friday would have loads of people. So Friday and Saturday, Sunday would be absolutely packed.
Dances.
And what we called mods and rockers, different, you know, certain way of dressing, and there were big fights and stuff. And I played, you know, playing pop tunes. Yeah. And while I was there, my dad saw the advert for the National Youth Jazz Orchestra in the newspaper. It had been run 1 week, so he phoned up straight away, and I went the second week and joined that. So then that's the first time I met any young people that like jazz. That was the only time I met them in London. It was like a revelation. What, you like? Yeah, you know. And you met, so it starts. But,
yeah,
strange times. Yeah.
But how was your discovery of jazz? Because like learning the jazz vocabulary, right? In those days, how was your progress? Like from vinyl records or? Yeah,
well, it's so different from now, and of course everybody's experience is different, you know. I mean, I realized over the years it's dangerous to talk about how you think it was for everybody, because it isn't. It's very different for depending who you are, where you're from, you know. Chance, the element of luck and chance. So my dad was a sort of what we called a semi-professional or amateur piano player. And he played the accordion. The accordion was a very big instrument in London in those years. So this is even before I was born, the pre-war years, so the early 1940s and stuff. The accordion, and in central London there were loads that he'd go and do gigs in the evening, like playing in pubs and coach outings. They used to have outings in a big coach, and they'd go to the coast for the day. All the guys in the pub, take loads of beer, and they'd hire my dad to go with the accordion so they could sing and stuff. But my dad was actually, so he couldn't read music or anything, but he loved tunes, like all the great standard tunes, and he listening to the radio. He loved people like George Shearing, who actually was actually a really great accordion player.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh really?
Oh yeah, he played accordion, and so did Stan Tracy, the English piano player. Yeah. So my dad knew the most accordion players and piano players, and of course the music on the radio, on what we call the wireless, we called it the wireless in those days. On the BBC radio, there was no pop music. It was mainly kind of this kind of people singing tunes and standards. So it's what my dad heard. So sort of close to jazz. And so I started listening to the radio when I was a kid, to the wireless, and I heard all this music. And I used to listen to, I remember my dad bought me one Christmas, what we called a crystal radio set. You built it yourself.
Oh, wow.
And it had a crystal, literally had a crystal you put in it called it the cat's whisker, with a wire that you twisted around to get enough energy on a set of headphones to get channels. So I used to have this thing in bed. It's a bit like an early transistor radio.
That's amazing.
I found the Voice of America.
Yeah.
You know, and of course it's all crackly from England. It's like, you know, this kind of Willis Conover. Look, this is the voice. This is Willis Conover, Voice of America, Tangier. And he's going, this is the jazz hour. And I'm like, oh, you know, and it's all crackly, and you could just about hear him. And but they were fantastic programs. You know, they would play Duke Ellington records, very mainstream. Duke Ellington, sure. Maybe Fats Waller. I really liked Fats Waller, which I remember from when I was a kid. You know, lots of stuff like that. And then a bit later on, my dad took me to a couple of the Jazz of the Philharmonic tours at the Festival Hall in London. So I was only then, I'd been about 14 or something, 13, 14 years old, and I went as a kid. And but I saw it was incredible. You know, one of them, there was Dizzy Gillespie Quintet with James Moody.
Wow.
Cannibal Adderley Quintet with Victor Feldman.
Oh man.
The original quintet. I saw Coleman Hawkins, Don Byas, Stan Getz.
All the greats.
Obviously, Ella Fitzgerald would be on these things singing.
Amazing.
They were incredible. I mean, they're terrible in the sense musically, as you know from those records, they were pretty stupid. You know, everybody.
Yeah, but still, yeah.
But just the fact of seeing all these peoples, and it was like seeing sort of God, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
And then my dad, when I was a little bit old, about 14, the very first person I ever saw play live, my dad took me to the original Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, the famous club here.
Yep. At
that time, it was a tiny little club in Gerrard Street in a different place in London. And it had actually been, it originally was a taxi driver's stop. The taxi drivers used to go in there to have like a cup of coffee and a bacon sandwich. That's what it was, a basement. And they took it and converted it. So it's just like any other club where the musicians got together.
Yeah,
you know, Ronnie had a lot of help from other musicians to make that place. They went in with paintbrushes, painting it up and ready to get it open, you know. Anyway, it got up and going, as we all know and love. And then he started bringing in some American musicians, and one of them was Dexter Gordon, who was one of the first to come. My dad took me to see Dexter Gordon play, and and there I was, and I just sat a few feet away from him, you know, looking at this great big guy with a big smile, this incredible saxophone. And I remember coming out of the club. So it was a Sunday afternoon session. You know, the afternoon one.
Yeah,
So that,
like
I was only so young, I couldn't go in the evenings. Wasn't quite legal. But I was always. I'm very tall, by the way. You can't see me, but I'm 6'2". So I was very tall as a kid, so I could get away with being looking older. You know. And so my dad took me, and we went in the Sunday afternoon session. And when we came out, and they finished whatever it was, 5 o'clock or 6 or something. Beautiful sunny day as it is here now. And Dexter was sat out on the steps outside. There's little steps at the side of the entrance to the club, which went down into a basement. So, you know, typical steps, like those brown, what do they call them, the buildings in New York.
Brownstones, yeah,
a bit like that, but the steps are going up. So he was sat there, sort of getting some air and looking around. And my dad took me up to say hello, and he shook hands. He was a very, very lovely, warm man, and just sort of said, "Hey, you play the saxophone?" And, oh yeah, I was terrified, you know, like looking at this guy, and of course you never ever forget it, you know. It's just like, it was lovely, you know. He just said a few words, and very generous, warm personality, and that was my introduction to it. And then my dad sold his accordion when we left Central London the first time because he didn't play anymore, and he part exchanged it and bought me a saxophone. I got to sell my saxophone, and then he found me a teacher who was sort of nothing to do. I didn't do music at school at all or anything. I just found me a teacher. I used to go on a Sunday morning, old money, 7 shillings and 6pence in old English money. That's about sort of 30 pence. You know. And I used to go on. I think it took me an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there on 2 buses and a train to get to my Sunday lesson. I went for about 2 years. Never played with anybody, and I just used to. And as you said right at the beginning, I just used to listen to records and play along with them. But the thing is, my teacher was a saxophone teacher, great player, right? But he didn't know anything about jazz theory or, you know, all the
harmony
stuff
or scales or whatever.
Those modes, 2-5-1, this, you know, the Lydian mode, all this stuff. It was never ever mentioned. All people did was just play by ear, you know. Which is what, in a sense, some of those great Americans virtually sort of did. You know, the Chet Bakers and the Stan Getzes and. They were ear players, you know. So I learned like that. And then I never really learned anything till later on after I came off the boat and somebody said you should go to a college. So to cut a long story short, I ended up going as what they call a mature student. I went to a music college, but even then it wasn't a jazz course. It was a classical course. I did learn some flute there, which is what I wanted to do. Yeah. But I'd also met people like John Taylor, piano player.
That's where you met. Okay.
And that's where I kind of would meet him, and we started doing this sextet with him. So I'd sort of be looking over his shoulder. John, what are you doing there? What is that? And he'd go, well, that's show me a chord or a shape, and that's that. And he worked something out. And I sort of learned like that. So sort of like we used to, in England, we call it sort of like learning is earn while you learn. So you might be doing a gig, but you learn by sitting next to somebody who was good, and you sat next to them and you watched and you listened to what they did, and then you might ask some questions. What was that you were doing there? You know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did I did John Dankworth's band, and well, the end of the big band, and there was a fantastic saxophone player and bass clarinet player called Tony Roberts. We played great flute as well, and Tony was an incredible player and very knowledgeable about things. And he showed me all kinds of. I remember the early days of things like patterns to practice on the saxophone. He had this incredible system of, all that kind of Oliver Nelson sort of fourth.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing is, he did incredible things with them. He knew how to improvise with them, and he sort of showed me all these things, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll go and practice all this stuff to try and, as you do. So that's where I came. That was my jazz education. Was on the street, really, on the gig, and then I learned that way.
And the boat, I guess, the cruise was really important in this case because you played for a year then, right? Basically playing all the time.
Yeah, but because we're just playing tunes,
But still, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, the gig was a gig. So we learned a lot of standards, just the melodies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You didn't get to play a solo. You had to call one tune, and then it changed to another tune, and it was all what we call segue, bang, 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 and you just called. That's one sharp, two flats, or called the key, and the piano player kept going. And we did sets of tunes for dancing. People just danced.
Man, that's amazing.
Actually, it's only one step away from what the early days of jazz. People danced.
Exactly.
It was the pop dance music of the day. But the incredible thing was, of course, I got off this boat. I teamed up on the boat with there were a couple of other young guys like me. A very young drummer called Terry Rodd, who's still around, and Viv, his brother, great piano player from Cornwall. And so we were all jazz fans. Off the boat, you got off the boat, we went, there was a number you called up called the jazz line, the telephone number. And you got a piece of paper and a pen, and you called it, and then it said, "Hello, jazz lovers. Okay, in town tonight." And you wrote down half note, this, that, and that.
That's so cool.
That, cover charge. You scribbled it all down, while you're getting it on the phone. And the other thing you could get was the Village Voice, the famous magazine. That was a one with listings, what we would call listings now.
Yeah.
But this jazz line was great. This is the most current thing you could get. So we get there off the boat. There was a market diner. We'd all go in there and have something to eat and drink. And it would be like, right, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Well, I'm going to half note. I'm going to the Vanguard. I'll see you later then. I'm going to go there first. And because there were so many places you could go, and everything ran till at least 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So you could easily make 2 or even 3 gigs. You start from one and go to another. And the first stop was always the Hickory House, which was right on 52nd Street, which was a famous kind of steakhouse, great big huge steak sat there. And in the middle of the room was a big horseshoe-shaped bar, and you could sit around this bar. You didn't have to eat. You could buy a drink. It was, whatever it was, half 50 cents or $1 or something, very cheap.
Yeah.
And you sat there, and in the middle was a little stage, an oval-shaped stage. And it was Billy Taylor Trio.
Really?
So you sit. That was a house band. Billy Taylor with Grady Tate playing drums.
Yeah, sure.
Bob Cranshaw, maybe. Chris, another bass player. So that's where we used to start out. Have a drink, sit around, hear them play, and then decide where to go.
Amazing. That's amazing.
I caught loads of bands there. I saw Miles's band at the Village Gate on a double bill with Dizzy Gillespie and Miles Davis quintets.
That's the quintet with Wayne and those guys.
Yeah, really, yeah.
And Tony Williams already. No. Yeah, already. Wow. How was that like for you?
It's unbelievable. I'd never heard anything like that ever in my life. I mean, you've got to remember this is 1967.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All my records at home were like Stan Getz and Sonny Rollins and Sonny Stitt and Dave Brubeck quartet and the Modern Jazz Quartet, that kind of thing.
Kind of more, yeah.
The stuff that you might have heard on a radio, very small amount that you might have got. And then I went there, and of course I've heard Miles. Obviously, I think I had Porgy and Bess, which I always loved. My dad had bought me a little.
That's a beautiful record. Yeah.
Some of the tracks off of that. So off we go to the Village Gate, and remember the guy said we're going to this drummer friend and I. This guy said, "Where do you want to sit?" I mean, look, because these places were half empty. There was no audiences in New York. Jazz was very dead in '67.
Yeah, that's incredible.
English pop music had killed its stone dead.
Sure. Yeah.
So. And the guy said, "Well, where do you want to go?" So I looked around at the stage, and the stage had a built-out piece in front, like an extended stage. And I said, can we sit up there? And he went, yeah, sure. So we sat sort of a few feet in front of the band, myself and this drummer, and I sat there, and Miles's band walked out, and of course they've all got very serious. It there wasn't too much laughing going on, It's like they're all a bit dour and scary. I was sat, we went, oh, and I think they played, and I was just, the point is, I'd love to say to you, oh yeah, man, it was all fantastic and wonderful. I got to, we sat on we heard this music, but I'd like to say that I thought it was all wonderful, but of course I didn't understand it. But it just left this incredible mark on me. That's the thing about I found later on with all kinds of music. I remember hearing some music of Messiaen live when he was there, an organ piece, and you can't come out and go, oh,
it's too much.
It's too much. You can't. But all you know is some things leave a mark on you. They leave a mark on you, and you go, it's powerful, and
that's a good thing.
And that's what I remember from that gig. It was just, rather than the detail, but because it's too long ago, I can't. I'd love to tell you, I sort of, but
no, but sure, I know what you mean exactly.
And you come away with this, that kind of feeling. The easier things to listen to is, I saw him about 6 times was Mel Lewis, Thad Jones' big band at the Vanguard.
Yeah, sure.
But that was fantastic, with Bob Brookmeyer and Joe Farrell, Eddie Daniels, Joe Farrell, Pepper Adams. It was such an incredible band. And I saw, and one night we went in, Herbie Hancock Depping on piano, with the big book of music, looking at great. And that used to be full up. And I saw, Bill Evans, a trio I saw there with Phil.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Man.
And an incredible gig I went with this drummer. We were the only, couple of times, we were the only people in a room. We went to Uptown, New York, and saw a quartet with Joe Henderson, Kenny Barron, Lewis Hayes.
Oh, wow.
And Herbie Lewis was a bass player called Herbie Lewis.
Yeah, sure. I know him.
It should have been Freddie Hubbard, but Freddie Hubbard hadn't shown up, as we found out. But we're just the two of us sat there listening to this band in this room. It was like a one-off kind of room kind of place. And we just sat there listening to all this music. Fantastic. Obviously Joe Henderson. I worshipped Joe Henderson.
Yeah, he was incredible.
So I'm sat there, and because they come off and they're all looking and laughing, and nudging each other, sort of looking at us because we're just kids, and they sort of come over. What are you kids? What are you doing? Who are you? I said, well, we're off a big ship down the road. We're jazz fans. We're musicians. We've come to hear you play. They're all laughing and nudging each other. They found it very funny that like young English kids, 17, 18-year-olds have come to hear them play this music. And the same thing happened. We went to Pookie's Pub saw Charlie Mingus's quintet. Same thing. Oh,
wow, man. That's
with Danny Richmond, Charles McPherson, and it's incredible. Other friends of mine, another friend of mine on the boat, was a piano player, and he was really into free music, which I wasn't at the time. I didn't, I had no understanding of the kind of that era. And of course, he immediately saw Sun Ra. So
he used to
go to see Sun Ra and the solo orchestra, and bought some of those records, those one-off records he used to make, where the covers were made by hand. So the one you had was only one. There was only one. That was it. The copy you had. They were.
That's incredible.
All nuts. But so he sort of went and checked out all that music. Coltrane died that summer, so I never saw him.
Caught him. Yeah.
Very sad. But I saw Elvin play with a band. But he was very worse for wear. He was in a bad way, but I think drink, and the rest of the band wouldn't look at him. It was Frank Foster, tenor player, Kenny Green, trombone player,
incredible.
Walter Bishop Jr., I think, was a piano player, and they sat there in this club in a half note, right at the late sets when everybody gone, and Elvin, he's grunting and groaning, and he said, all of a sudden he smashed the hi-hat down so hard that the cymbals went ding, and they turned in the other way. It went ding like that, and the band just stood there and he's cursing and shouting. And then this little Japanese woman, of course, I realised was Kiko. Came over and got this cymbal and straightened it out for him. And it carried on like that. We left. You can't say that it was a great musical memory.
No.
I remember this terrible. And Elvin, of course, it's another one I've always used to worship. He's just like such a, of that kind of world of drumming.
Yeah.
Sure. As the same when I saw Roy Haynes with Gary Burton's band.
Oh man, yeah.
That was wonderful.
Steve Swallow probably, right? And
and guitar player called Larry Coryell.
Larry Coryell, yeah, sure.
And Remember John Handy? He had a quintet, fantastic.
Yeah, sure.
At the front line was violin, Jerry Goodman, and a cello player as well. 3 of them in a line, sitting in a line.
Yeah.
With Jerry Hahn, guitar player.
Jerry Hahn, yeah, sure. He did with Gary Burton a lot, yeah.
Canadian drummer, Terry Clark.
Yeah, he played with Jim Hall. Yeah.
Don Thompson was a bass player. Great.
Yeah.
And saw them at the Vanguard, because that was like a big wig band at that time. That was the band that did all the festivals and everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
He's a great player, John Handy. Fantastic.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah,
nowadays people don't talk about him. Nobody remembers sort of John Handy, you know.
Very underrated. Many of these guys are like really, you know, underrated in a sense that. But yeah, amazing experience. I mean, it's, you know, when you describe that, it's like really wow, you know.
Yeah, I was just lucky, you know.
Imagine that.
Yeah, and that was the end of an era, of course, because then the Mary was sold that year. And that was the end of the transatlantic liners, because they were costing a fortune. You know, they were losing so much money. And then, but of course, that was the point. It was the only way of getting to New York if you didn't have any money. If you were, so you got a job on a boat, because there were no cheap airlines. There's no such thing as Virgin Airlines and Richard Branson and this and that. I mean, it didn't exist. It was a fortune. Only the very rich could afford to get on a plane. In fact, I played on the boats with a couple of musicians that came to London to do Ronnie's, and they'd rather come on the ship. So Yusuf Latif.
Really?
Yeah, really? So we played with him. He wanted to keep his chops in. So we used to go and practice in the laundry rooms on the ship. We used to give a little tip to somebody. They'd let us go down where they did the laundry in the Mary in his rooms. So come on, Yusuf, we'll go down there. And yeah, he'd come down there to play. And then we got him to come and play for the crew, which was hysterical, in the crew bar on a Sunday morning with these big stokers, guys that stoke coal, you know, big guys with pints of beer and that. And it's just Yusuf Latif, you know. It's like, it's great. He's a lovely man, great. We had, and Clark Terry came on. Really? It was nice because and the time only changed an hour a day, so there was none of that drastic, you know, time wrench. Yeah, it was a very slow thing. And then some of them played. I think Clark Terry might have done like a little cabaret spot, so that meant they virtually travelled for virtually nothing. Yeah, and got to England and then did their week, and it was a nice way to travel. So that's amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, it sounds so unreal, you know, in a way, because it's so way back, but incredible, really incredible.
Yeah, so it's just the end of an era. It was the end of an era in a way.
You caught the last boat, basically, virtually speaking.
In a funny kind of way, yeah. Yeah. And then everything went a different way. You know, it wasn't that long until we were into fusion jazz, and Miles went into his rock thing, and you know, John McLaughlin left England, and blah blah. It all went another direction.
But still, you guys, when you know, McLaughlin left England, you came basically back to England, and when I see like the early '70s, what you did, you know, Pause and Think Again with John, and the record with John Surman, Tales of the Algonquin, which I love, which is one of the most underrated records, I think, of John.
That's a great record.
Incredible record. And you played with Mike Gibbs, and I wanted to ask you, how did all these connections happen, like with Mike Gibbs and John Surman? And
well, I think, I mean, what happened for me, I mean, I've been in Nijo, so I knew how to play in big bands and stuff. And I ended up in, I came off the boat. I went to a college. I went to the college, but at the same time, my teacher at the college was John Dankworth, who was a famous English band, you know, band leader. So I did Ronnie's Scots as a very young man with him. With Cleo Lane would sing, she'd do a set, and then we'd do band sets. So we'd do very long sets, like hour and 3/4. She'd do 3/4. The band would do an hour, and but of course in that band there was incredible. So Henry Lowther had been in it. Mike Gibbs was in the band playing trombone.
Okay.
So I met Mike there, and he knew I could play. You know, I was the young guy. Tony Coe had been through that band, who I knew very well. Tony Roberts, the saxophone player I mentioned, who was a friend of mine, and so people, and then Mike would hear you play, he would invite you to go along, and then you did something with Ken. Your name went around this very small community, very, very small, and you found yourself sort of going from one to another, and it was all by
word of mouth.
Chance really isn't quite the right word, but a little bit of luck and being around a certain place at a certain time. You know, Ronnie's old place, what they called the old place. When the new club opened, the Ronnie Scott's, there was a small one where the English guys could play, so everybody had a place to meet, and you know, and various things just happened for me because I'd done Ronnie's with John Dankworth. I got a call one night. I mean, I was only sort of 20, 21. I got a call in the middle of the night to go to to Cologne. I mean, it's about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then Pete King, the not saxophone Pete King, but the other guy with Ronnie Scott that ran Ronnie Scott's. Pete King was the other person that started the club. He said, "You got a passport?" I said, "Pete, it's 2:30 in the morning. You know, I'm asleep with my wife. I was married very young." I said, "Yeah, I've got a passport." He said, "You doing anything tomorrow and the day after?" I said, "No." He said, "Right, you're going to Cologne." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, this Kenny Clark, Franchi Bolan big band."
Really? Oh, wow.
But with Stan Getz. They were making a record. So I had to get up and go on a ferry because I went with Tony Coe, and Tony Coe wouldn't fly anywhere. Hated airplanes. So we got on this ferry and we got on and then a train and went to Cologne. So within the space of about less than 24 hours, I'm sat in this room and there is Stan Getz stood in front of me, you know, Kenny Clark, Shahib Shihab, Art Farmer.
Oh, wow.
All these people I had records of, you know, of kids. And then I'm sort of stood, I didn't say a word to anybody. I just sat dead quiet. And I sat, and Ronnie Scott, because I knew Ronnie a bit from the club, and he'd sort of recommended, he said, "Look, I know this young guy, he'd be really good, he can read well, and it's a big band, you know, there's a job to be done." And it was a funny record. He was writing more adventurous music on this record. It's called Change of Scene.
Okay, let's check it out. I don't know.
And yeah, and there's a few Europeans in it as well. Manfred Schoof was in the band.
Yeah.
And then the rest were the usual people that were in the band. Oki Pearson and that. Herb Geller was playing lead alto because Derek. Ronnie Scott was still there, and Tony Coe was still there.
Amazing.
So I turned up and did this record, and so your name sort of goes around a bit, you know, and you start to meet people. So in England, I met Mike Gibbs, and if you met Mike Gibbs, of course, Ken Wheeler's in the band as well. It was all what you might say slightly incestuous, you know, like a small family. You know, we all played with each other, and through those little connections, you go bounce from one thing to another, and end up working with a lot of different people, you know. Yeah, which of course is absolutely an incredible experience you've got. So I just found myself going from one to another. So I mean, the things I was good at, I sort of taught myself through being in the nudge and taught to read quite well.
Yeah,
and
that's important. Yeah.
I've been with John Taylor, and a bit later on with Gordon Beck, another fantastic English player.
I love him. Yeah.
I started to learn about how to play over more contemporary harmony, like when I say more, you know, like the kind of harmony of the time, you know, there's the way they wrote tunes, so not diatonic,
2-5-1, but
so I got very good at it, and I could sight read stuff really fast, and just I could interpret music. John Taylor once said to me, he said, "You're an incredibly good interpreter, Stan." So in other words, you give me music and you interpret it. Went down, and he went, you know, you could work out what it was from the beginning, which of course was actually, you know, with everybody, there was never much time to rehearse anything, and everything's always done under pressure. You became a youthful person. I played the flutes and played alto and tenor and soprano, flute, alto, flute. So you had some colours and things you could use. So I became busy, you know, and that's
amazing.
You know,
that's amazing. But you mentioned John Taylor, and you know, pause and think again. It's like speaking of John Surman before about that record, and this record again, it's like such a beautiful one because it's a smaller lineup. I think it's a sextet, right? Yeah, it's a sextet. And
yes. Think again was, I mean, basically that was the beginning of John Taylor's sextet.
Yeah,
that band worked for about 10 years, and there is the only other official recording, apart from radio broadcasts, which are some fantastic radio broadcasts. It was the time of cassettes. Those little cassettes. Well, Gordon Beck had a great idea. He started a cassette label, cassettes only.
Really?
Jaguar, you know, and people were little, and because they were inexpensive to buy and make, you know, it was a good little marketing thing. Of course, the item itself, as you know, cassettes are dreadful. You know, they break and all the rest of it, obsolete things. But and John Sextet, we did a broadcast at the original Capital Radio, which is like the first one of those sort of small little private radio stations, right in central London. And at the time, in order for them to play pop music all day, play records, they had to fulfill a certain amount of live airtime with the Musicians Union, and otherwise they couldn't get a license. So it was like so many hours of live music.
Yeah, that's so good.
So unlike the BBC, they certainly don't want to put any live music on or jazz during the day. So it was all pop records. But from 11 o'clock at night, they didn't really care so much. So they would hire these jazz groups, which didn't cost them very much to go in. And you'd be on the air to maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. And you play for a bit, then sit. They used to buy loads of food and drinks and stuff, and all in the studio. And we sit and have food and have a beer and all that. And it was a phone in. So you play a couple of tunes and then somebody call in. Oh, I've got a question for John Taylor. I've got a question for Stan Sulzmann or whatever, you know. And these people would call in, there would be like a bit of chat, like just as you have on the radio now, you know, a bit early days, that kind of, and then a bit more music. So, and this fulfilled, they used up their radio time.
Quota,
So anyway, the thing is, I did them with John, and I did them with Gordon Beck, and a lot of other people did them. But the recordings were really good. There was a really good engineer. It was a nice room to play in with a good piano. So John got the tapes. And we released one on this cassette label called Fragment. It's lovely, actually, it's beautiful. And I've just spoke to Chris Lawrence, who thinks he's still got
man, that would be so nice.
He thinks he might have it in digital format.
Oh, wow.
I've got it transferred because it's fantastic. And there's the most incredible Ken Wheeler trumpet solo on one of the tracks.
Oh, yeah, I love Kenny.
You know, one of those really memorable, you always think about, oh, that solo, you know. So that was around. And then, but the rest was like 10 years of playing in John's sextet.
But did you guys do Europe as well, or only UK?
No, it only ever worked in the UK.
UK, yeah.
And it wasn't the sort of big hit band. So the one that worked all the time was Mike Westbrook. That was the popular band. You know, everybody used to write about it every week. Mike Westbrook's band here, and he had a great band with Surman and Ozzy. But that was the one that was that was in the big name. John's one was, there was an audience, but much less, and a couple of places that we played fairly regularly.
Yeah.
I also had a quartet for 10 years with John and Ronnie Mathieson and Tony Levin, and we made a record.
Oh, really?
There's a record on Loan with Gratitude, which I've seen around lately.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. That's like 1977. That's like your kind of band leader debut, right? In a way. Yeah.
Well, I ran that band for 10 years, and we worked for the BBC, the EBU. We broadcast, went to Molde in Norway. So I was seeing John a lot, you know, and I used to love playing with him. Ronnie Mathieson was like incredible bass player. But you know, as you know, he had a an alcohol problem, you know, a serious one. And bless his heart, he passed away about a couple of years ago, and he was pretty good state, remarkable sort of guy, and we all loved him. He was a great character, but the alcohol stopped him from doing what he should have, you know. But that's another long story. And
But speaking of John, like, I mean, for me, he's, you know, even with any musician who played with him, I ask this because a group of my favorite musicians include like John Taylor and Kenny Wheeler, of course, both guys that you played with. And both of them are in the way quite underrated in a wider sense, if you know what I mean. Like musicians, we really were like, you know, you got to play with them so much. But how was it like to play with John? Let's say, what did you learn from him, or like working?
I mean, of all the things I've done in my life, I mean, I'm 72 now, and I'm still playing, and I'm playing a bit, you know, not as much as we can with the pandemic.
Sure.
I'm supposed to play in a week and a half is my first gig, if it happens, in Manchester, and then we've got a spike of pandemic there. Anyway,
that's beautiful.
I'm supposed to work there with Norma Winston and Nikki Iles. So with, you know, playing with John was like one of the best things I think I've ever done or learned from ever, and both, you know, John and Ken are obviously incredibly strong influences and powerful, but I think I was probably closest to John, probably even more than Ken. I mean, it makes no difference, it's all pointless, you know, this
sure, that's not
wonderful, but I just had a great affinity. I mean, loved playing John's music, you know. We had a great duo for many years. I
know, yeah. I love the record you did, Everybody's Song But My Own, where you actually play Kenny's music, right?
Yeah.
I love that
record.
I've
got it here. I've got it on, which I can send it out. It's not released, but we did. John wrote. He orchestrated all his music for the NDR, for the Bremen Radio Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
And we did the duo thing with the orchestra, an hour's worth of music, and I've got that. Just the two of us went and played. And I've got this thing recorded here. It's absolutely wonderful. You know, I mean, I just love his tunes. So that's how I sort of wanted to write a mixture of that and the things that I was hearing around, you know. And I'd come out of, I suppose, I was a follow on to the music. I like with Miles. It was that band that I love. I love one of my favourite ones is Feudal Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The tunes on there and all that Speak No Evil and all those records. That was the music, that the kind of tunes and stuff that I came from in a way. That's the one that really sort of grabbed my generation as opposed to playing standards and things. And John sort of knew all this music, and he was a step on the game. Became very individual in his end, and in the end, and his own language. We all sort of. I'm trying to learn that kind of world of language of music, which is what they used and Kenny used. So that's what I became. I'm very, very embroiled in. And then John eventually took ages for him to get. And Kenny Wheeler was lucky because he had. I've forgotten his name now, from promoter from the north of England, who sort of took Ken and made him into something.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, in a great way, because otherwise nothing would have happened. Ken was so quite, he'd just sit here doing.
Yeah, correct.
Because he used to do what we all did. Ken was doing TV shows, game shows, and musician, and just to earn a living like everybody else.
Sure.
He was slowly lifted out of that, and his name has got known in Europe. But Ken couldn't. Music doesn't do it on its own. You need you need somebody else to. If you can't, I mean, some people are powerful, aren't they? They can lift themselves out. John Surman did it. Very powerful man, incredible musician, also very strong. Sure. Nothing's going to happen. He just sit there, waiting for a miracle. So other people kind of lifted him out. And John firstly did the same thing. He upped him. I remember when he went, I remember he had a Volvo and a estate car. He got in this car with a box of tapes, reel-to-reel tapes of broadcasts of all his music, and he drove to Germany, and he went there for 2 weeks, not working, just got in the car with and some money and drove around Germany looking at record labels and stuff.
Oh, wow, man.
Trying to promote his music. This is my sextet, this is my trio, stuff like this, that, and the other. And that's how he got to Manfred Eicher. That's how he did it. He just went and knocked on the door. Hello, I'm John Taylor. I've got some, and that's how he did it. He just very incredibly self-believing, strong. Yeah. I mean, very humble as well. A lot of humility in John. He wasn't a big, very, but a great focus and direction of what he wanted to do. And of course, John had built up this incredible reputation, because the thing about John was what made him extra special. There are some people that are great soloists and great players and wonderful, but they're not necessarily great to play with.
Yeah, he was a team player. Yeah,
he was a team player. So John, when it came to him, he'd be him. But when he was playing with other people, he always said, like, he would be with that person at that time. However you played, whatever style it was, he could adapt to that person. So he'd come up. He'd been playing accompaniment for John Dankworth and Cleo Lane. Playing formal piano parts. He'd worked for Joe Henderson endlessly at Ronnie's, George Coleman, Victor Feldman, two of them vibes at piano, Frank Rossellino. I mean, the list is just this endless list of people who play. So everyone, he played different for them. Lee Konitz, he got very close to Lee Konitz.
No, I didn't know that, really.
Oh, yeah, they were great friends. Yeah,
really?
Lee used to write to him. I just found out apparently somebody's still got the letters, wrote a lot of letters. Used to keep in touch. They made a duo record together in New York.
Oh shit! I don't know that one. Well, I have to check it out.
I don't know that. And but they were lifelong friends. John had these contacts everywhere. So Ralph Towner.
Yeah. Okay.
The people in Europe, and then he worked with Jan Gabrek for a while. He was in that quartet.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. And Peter Erskine then invited him, like the trio. So I love the trio. Yeah.
So the people that knew John, he had this incredible reputation. So, but of course, he was known as that rather than the leader. So even I remember speaking to Manfred Eicher. A couple of times I've met Manfred. I've played on records that we've done for him, and he's asking about John something. But John had never been. He wasn't his name on as the leader, was it? It was Azimuth. He didn't say the John in the trio. He said Azimuth. So people knew Azimuth, but so John was always part of something. I think it was quite hard to get him up. It took a long while to get him up until eventually. All those years he's working in Italy and all that stuff. And his name became mine. So it was a bit behind Ken. And the same thing had happened for Ken. But it's living in England is very difficult because it's such a small, incredible talent, but it's a tiny little island.
Yeah, sure.
That little bit of water seems to create. It might as well be the Atlantic.
Yeah. bizarre.
So the guys that made it are the ones that sort of just go. So like John Surman, Upton went. He lived in Belgium for a while, didn't he? With Stu Martin.
Yeah.
In the farmhouse. So he moved there. You know, Dave Holland went to New York and stayed there. That's it. His life changed. And
McLaughlin and all these guys. Yeah.
Before that, you know, Victor Feldman going to the States and moving there. You know, Victor was like a huge name in England. He was a child prodigy. So these people left. You know, Tubby Taze could have gone from England, but he, you know, various things happened in his life, and he didn't. But I mean, he had the opportunities.
Yeah. Incredible.
But a lot of people they had to go. John McLaughlin. They end up having to leave here. I mean, John Taylor used to talk about going to Italy. He almost nearly did it a couple of times. He fancied living in Italy. He quite liked the idea of living there. You know, he was working in Europe.
A lot in Italy. Yeah.
And he could have upped and gone. His family were growing up, so you know, but he didn't go.
He played a lot in Italy. I played quite a lot with Paul McCandless. You know Paul, right?
Oh yeah.
And we toured with Paul a lot, and Paul like recorded in the last years of John's life, like a lot with John, and he just said like what a player John was. Like that's I loved hearing that. I always ask him those questions and like. When we play.
Well, I think you hear it from everybody. Everybody who ever says they all love. He's a great person to play with.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and a great soloist. But
sure.
They don't always marry up. I know. I can think of. I remember Gordon Beck, who bless his heart isn't here anymore. But Gordon was difficult because he would be quite a bit more selfish. So it's like the piano wasn't very good or something.
Yeah, I've heard stories.
Sort of kind of give up or just stop playing or start doing silly things. So he kind of lost it, the fact there's a band playing, where John would make the best of anything.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thinking, like what's important is the overall in the band, not you. And
you, yeah.
And the way of accompanying, the actual way of the touch at the piano and what he fed you. It was John could feed you creative things and take you places.
Yeah.
Follow you around. And I mean, I love that, you know. It's a cool way to play, you know.
Yeah, it's I love that. I mean, about both these amazing greats you played, also with Kenny. You know, Kenny for me like is probably one of the best composers ever in jazz. Like I love his melodies. You know, I transcribed so many of them, and I wanted to ask you because you had a chance. You know, many musicians had the chance to play in his large ensemble, but so did you. I mean, like, you know, music for large and smaller ensembles, but like you also played in small groups with him, which is, I guess, even a more special feeling.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I did quite a few. I did one quintet record in
Songs for Quintet. That's the last one, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's one before. There's one on a label called Soul Note, an Italian label.
Oh, Flutter by Butterfly. Yeah, I love that one, man. This is with Billy Elgar and Dave, right? Holland. Yeah, I love that record.
That's a long story. That tour, originally, because the gigs that we did a month's tour. That's how that was made. We did a month in Europe touring around. There weren't that many gigs. It's a long story, but it was actually the gigs were organised by is it Thomas Towers? And I can't remember the guy that used
Saudades. Yeah, Saudades probably. Yeah.
He used to work with Manfred Eicher.
Yeah, Thomas. Yeah.
Is that half Thomas? Yeah, they used to organise the work part, the gigs, and you know that went along with the records. And it should have been an ECM record. But I think the original lineup for that record wasn't as it was on that tour. Something happened, but I don't know. Even to this day, I don't know, and it doesn't matter. I don't.
Sure.
But out of the blue, they were doing this. So because you got you know, it's Dave Holland and JT and Kenny doing this thing, and then out of the blue, because I'd already done loads of things in England. I did loads of small group things with Ken, and I played with him all the time. You know, he said, "Hey Stan, you fancy doing this tour with me? We're going to Europe for a month." Yes. I went, "What with Dave?" I went, "Yeah, great." You know, so. Oh, okay, you know, so I took this thing on, not knowing why, and he said, "Oh, the drummer is Billy Elgar, who's an American guy. He come from the States, and I think he'd had a bit of a colourful life in the States, and a few Americans left to sort of straighten up, and he's a lovely guy, you know. Billy was a lovely, lovely man, very funny, great player, really real character. He's like a Woody Allen."
Yeah.
Woody Allen. You know, anyway, I'd never met him before ever. It's just Ken had met him, but I think the story was they'd asked a couple of other people to do it. There was even talk about Elvin Jones doing that tour and Roy Hay. and they'd ask all these people, but nobody was available or whatever it was, because they were trying. So of course, the fact that I was there, nobody knew who I was. It was completely, I'm just an unknown person. They could ask anybody. But Ken, it was quite dutiful in a way. He wanted people, but obviously that's not always good business. Musically we have a ball, but the real, business and the real world and musical world don't always. They don't always go.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly.
Certain things have to be because that's how So anyway, I ended up on this tour. So they lost quite a few of the gigs. Promoters dropped out because the big names had gone. So it wasn't Roy Haynes or Elvin or someone or this or famous saxophone player. Whoever it might have been, Joe Lovano, let's say.
For instance, that would
Someone like Joe would have fitted right in there, no problem.
Yeah, sure.
He'd asked me to do it, so nobody knew me. So he lost quite a few of the gigs. So Dave Holland was the other person that was very well known, and John at that time was actually well known around Europe. So, but we did it first class on the train all around Europe, just on these trains. Because Dave Holland was American, he could buy this special European ticket.
Yeah,
first class ticket. Then you stamp it on day one, and you get 1 month anywhere in Europe, first class on the train. And that's we zoomed all around Europe doing these gigs, and that record was made. Flutterby was made in Milan. Was part of that tour, and it was the runt of the pack because ECM had dropped it. They didn't want to record now because the star names weren't there. Manfred didn't want to record it.
That's so quite sad in a way.
Don't record this, we leave it. Yeah. So it's sad, but also
logical. Fortunate also.
I understand it, but I mean the thing was, it's fantastic that this guy Bolandrini, his name was, Italian guy with Solno, because he used to just record bands passing through. Anybody passing through Milan. It was pay them cash in their hand. Quick, in the studio, you were there for 4 hours or whatever it was. The old-fashioned way, like American. Cash in your hand, thanks, goodbye. That was the last thing you had to do with it,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how they were made, and that's why that record exists.
Yeah, some beautiful tunes like Gigolo and all those tunes. I mean, like
fantastic.
We Salute the Night and like beautiful stuff. Yeah,
they're great, aren't they?
That was your first tour in Europe, like with a smaller group, like with Kenny.
I've done a few little things, but I'd never done very much in the way of small group. Little bits and pieces I'd been over and done with people. I got some. It's funny. I did Depths with when Alan Skidmore, English saxophone player.
Yeah, sure. I know.
Alan had a very bad car accident, a really serious one. It's another long story. Anyway. So at short notice, I went to Germany and did one of the Hamburg workshops, which I'd done before with a couple of people. I've done it with Mike Gibbs and Graham Collier, but so they knew me. And I had to do with Volker Kriegel, German guitar player.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
John Taylor was a piano player. Me, lovely German drummer. He's dead now. On there, Eberhard Weber played bass.
Really? Oh man. That's amazing.
And Zbigniew Seifert, the violin player.
The violin, yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful one.
So turned up and did this workshop, and then he did a record. So I did a record with them, but we never gigged anywhere. I did something with Uli Beckerhoff and John Taylor, trumpet player, and that was done in Belgium, recorded there for Bruno Castellucci.
Yeah.
And Dieter Ilg, lovely bass player.
Oh, the bass player, yeah, sure.
We did a couple of gigs, and that was it. But nothing. I never worked like weeks and weeks at a time with anybody. I just didn't find myself. I wanted to, but I didn't. It's the same thing. It's about chance, isn't it? Here.
Yeah.
I was offered the because I'd done that Kenny Clark, Francie Boland big band record. I knew Herb Geller very well, and he really liked me, and he knew I was a really good player, like a double, and play the flute and everything. And 3 times I got offered the NDR job.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I turned it down because it was always the wrong time in my life. The very last time I'd been separated and divorced from my first wife from a very long marriage, and I was looking after my son. I had a teenage son, and it was the wrong time. I couldn't be moving to London. I'd have had to move to him, and times before that, and I got busy in London. Times before, earlier on, I was doing a lot of studio work as well. Not that I liked it, but it was good work. And
I wanted to ask you about that, by the way. I've spoken with Henry about that. Yeah. And, Henry's like on hundreds of records, and so are you. Like, I check your list. It's like Grace Jones, Paul McCartney, and how did these sessions look like? Because you caught like the second wave, the 80s, right?
Yeah, it's the 80s. Well, the thing was, it was such a big, as you know, the English sort of English pop market, pop world, if you like. And it was still really pre-synthesizers. Synths hadn't taken over, so everything was recorded. Like, you know, there were bands, and it was the days when groups used to, the big name rock groups,
yeah,
these famous bands would use, as you know, months and months, 6 months to make a record. They'd be in the, they spend a week getting
bizarre,
the
yeah.
I mean, mad. They're all, you know, everybody's stoned and smoking and enough drugs, and they're sitting there, you know, bang, bang, bang. So, I mean, it's insane. The whole thing was insane. But I mean, the work. So you couldn't. There was so much work. I mean, you did TV jingles and stuff. You could do at 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 till 9, an hour. Finish that, then go to a studio at 10, and you'd be working with them. I did a lot with Elton John. You know, I did a lot of those early records we played on because he had horn sections.
Yeah.
Somebody did the arrangements, and you turned up, but you didn't always know who they were, the artists. It just said
you did not even see them, right? Usually,
they weren't there. No, you just tracked on to the. It's the tracking on. You know, horn parts to this, horn parts to that, solo on this, solo on that. Play that. Yeah, off you went. And there was just so. And of course, it was. You did it, and you came home. You didn't have to do it anymore. So it wasn't like you had to do a theatre show. You go back every night and play this horrible music that drove you insane. You know, it was like it was just like it was. Until I had a young family, I had a very young child to feed and a wife, and I mean the only jazz gigs playing at the Bull's Head, you know, 3 times a year, after, you know, for 30 quid. In those days, 15 or 20 quid was you don't live on that, you know. I had to play and pace to live, so you happily took the work that came in, and it kind of didn't tie you down to anything because it was finished, you know.
Yeah, you went and did it. Yeah.
And then if you had a tour or something, a jazz thing in, it's just, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm not free, you know. I mean, the dangerous part was there were some people that were really great players that they would give sort of the weight would go, so studio things would come in, and then they'd cancel the jazz work to do the studio work because it's much better paid, and then you end up not playing. But I always kept the balance to do no, whatever. So I want to do this. In fact, I even got out of commercial things that other people couldn't believe. I put depths in to go and do a Ken Wheeler broadcast or something for no, you know, simply because it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, sure.
Soul together, and so I managed to sort of find my way through all that mess. And then when I got to the age of nearly coming up to 40, it was about 38, 39, my first long marriage had broken up. I was with my son, and I was a bit of a mess, you know, and I got a lot of help, and got myself together and I decided to make huge changes. And I very slowly decided, right, I don't want to do any more commercial work. So I very gradually phased myself out of it, made myself not available for certain things, the ones that I would do. Because I did some, when I say this, you know, people sort of think, oh, you sold out to commercial music. I played some fantastic music in that world.
Sure.
Some fantastic writers. I mean, I worked with Klaus Ogerman, with, you know, with the LSO. Lovely writer that did all the Earth, Wind and Fire writing, the horn writer, I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, he came in, we did stuff in London, you know, or all sorts of famous writers came and did stuff. You found yourself on these sessions. And it was, so there was a lot of good stuff, and you learned a lot. I'd sat next to fantastic classical saxophone flute players and stuff, and I became friends with them, personal friends.
That's so important.
And they teach me a bit of stuff, how to play this, how to do that, and I'd be talking about jazz. They'd learn a few. There was this like lovely kind of pool of stuff. That was the good side of it. There was a horrible bad side as well, with some not very nice people and a lot of crooks and the rest of it. But that's life, you know. Life is a mixture of stuff, you know. I did one. There was a French film writer called Philippe Sard, very famous, mad as a March hare, this guy. We used to call him the Marquis de Sade. That was his nickname.
Oh my God.
He was nuts. I mean, he's terrible. But he used to hire, in Paris, so the French film industry, the art film industry, you know, these really expensive, big films. So he used to hire American jazz player names, you know, to look on the screen, you know, the credits, Wayne Shorter. This is for real, Wayne Shorter, really? Stan Getz, Billy Cobber, you know, be on the credits of the film. And in the squad, and you got Billy Byers, who was a fantastic American writer, did a lot of the actual writing. He used to, this guy, Philippe Sard, used to sketch out a few ideas and sing things, but they used to have all these incredible orchestrators that would do this stuff for whatever ensembles. And just as a student, I did loads of things for him in London. We used to think, oh, no, because he was a nightmare to work for, you know. But I mean, I went to France and worked in a little studio in Paris. It was a saxophone player, very well. I forgot his West Coast tenor player. Then he played baritone. His name's gone now. Terrible. Here we go. It was a West Coast player. Anyway, so I met this guy who I'd had on these old West Coast jazz records. I sort of sat next to him for 2 days, and we're chatting about that, this, that, and the other. I did another one in London. There was only a little row of seats in the front row in this big studio. And I sat down, I saw the chair that said soprano saxophone. Then there was one with trumpet, which was a trumpet player I knew from the London Symphony Orchestra, who's retired, a fantastic player, lovely guy. So I went, hello, how you doing? Yeah, he said, what are we doing today? I said, Philippe Sard. I said, there's a flute chair on the end. Who sat there, you know? So I'm wondering if it's like going to be a classical player. So I'm sat there, and the door of the studio opens, and this tall guy comes in, tall black guy with a flute case, and it was Hubert Laws.
Really?
You know?
Oh, man.
I got 2 or 3 days sat next to Hubert Laws. I said, hey, man, you know, we started talking about this and that and jazz. And, you played on it? Yeah. And, you know, so I'm sat next to this wonderful, legendary flute player, you know, talking about instruments. And so that was the positive side of it. We were just doing film music, you know.
Amazing.
So it wasn't all horrible or bad. You got some good stuff out of it as well. And you got well paid.
Sure.
And that paid for, so if I made quite a few recordings and stuff that I never got grants or anything. I wasn't any good at getting grants here or chasing money. So a lot of that money, I would filter my own money back into making things.
Sure.
Making stuff. And so that's where it went back into that. So I always managed to produce something. So throughout my life, I've always managed to. Another album. I've done 3 or 4 things with Nikki, Iles. There's a couple with John.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
With John Taylor, actually a duo one, which you maybe don't know about.
That's double exposure. That one.
Yeah.
I know that one. Yeah, sure. I love them. Yeah.
So you know, so all these things over the years, sort of, I've got all this stuff that I've manufactured myself. So at least I give myself credit when I did it, you know, and I made something happen. Because if you're not a big household name, people aren't going to take you, and you know, your face isn't on the front of a magazine. I'm not a great one for, as you can see.
Come on.
Well, you know what I mean. You know.
No, but sir. You don't have curly hair, and you know.
I don't have the curly hair, and I don't have the hat. I'm a Cockney from London. It's not, you know, it's not what you see on the front of Time magazine, or you know, it just isn't. So you live with it, and so it's not always easy to get your way.
Sure.
You know, to have a. I don't know. I call it a profile. I suppose is what people call it nowadays. You know, now we've got the internet and your website and your this and that account and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. You know.
But are you comfortable? Like you know, you mentioned On Loan with Gratitude, which is 1977, right? And that was kind of like co-led or your lead band, right, as a debut. But like, do you feel comfortable being a band leader now through the years? Like, how have you learned that? Like. Leading the band, like
I learned a lot about it. You know, I learned some hard things as well, some hard lessons. I remember when I had this quartet with Ron Matheson and John Taylor and Tony Levin, and I got my very first week at Ronnie Scott's. That was a big thing in this country. I got a week at Ronnie Scott's. It was like it's like the gig. You know, you couldn't get
Village Vanguard in New York, kind of like
exactly. So I got a week there, and I'm very young, very inexperienced. So. Great, and then so I'm doing this week, and of course it runs till finished at 3. You did 3 sets, and you did the last one 2 till 3, the sort of graveyard set. When after the big name thing, a lot of people had gone. There's a few people drinking and eating, but you had to fill the. So, and because I got Ron Matheson, well, we all like to drink. I mean, I did. I go with John Taylor. It was a massive beer drink. We went down the pub, but we always played and did the gig. You know, there was a kind of sense of. But Ron Matheson was a problem. He's a problem drinker. You know.
Yeah.
So. We did one night, and Tony Oxley was depping on drums for Tony Levin. So I got Tony, knew Ron very well, and played at the club endlessly. Oxley, you know. So we get coming up for the last set. It's time to go. And Pete King says, "Stan, okay, Stan, it's time. You've got to get your boys on. Band leader, get your boys on." Those words. You've got to find them. Where's so and so? He's down in the bar. You've got to run down and get John. We're on, mate. Come on, quick. You know, upstairs. So like the responsibility is yours. So not only are you thinking about which tunes am I going to play and how creative I'm going to, you've got to get these people on the stage and they're a bit wayward, you know. John's having a fag and a beer. Matthew said, I can't find him, you know. I'm going, oh, no, where is he? And Oxley went, look, and he sat at the bar. There was a bar facing the stage, bar in the corner, and he sat with he's got his head down on his arm. He's fast asleep, you know. I thought, oh, I went to wake him up, and Tony Oxley said, leave him, don't wake him, leave him. He said, it's not worth it, it'd be trouble, you know, leave him. And because I'm very young and agreeing, and I thought, oh, no, I've got to wake him up, I've got to get him on, so shake him a bit, get on the stage. And Ron's sitting there, and he's kind of coming round a bit, you know. So we've started playing. We've already started playing without him, trio. So I'm really upset and distracted, and it's, you know, I'm supposed to be running a quartet. This is my band, you know. And Ron staggers on the stage, and because he can't find, he's trying to get the lead into the hole, into the amplifier, and he can't find it, you know. He had this old lead that had what we call a plaster band-aid around the, because he'd spend thousands of pounds on drinks, but he'd never buy a new lead, you know, to get that kind of
mentality.
So he had this thing patched out, and he's got it, and he's managed to get it in only halfway. You know what happens when you get a jack? So we're playing, you know, so it's awful, you know, this is going on, and he's starting, it's all kind of horrible, and I'm sat there. And we get to the end of the gig, and Ron's going, oh, you went, great set that, I really enjoyed that. And he goes, because he's sort of sobered up a bit, and we're all sort of got white face. I'm looking at him thinking, oh, you know. So the next thing, the thing is that we always forgave Ron because we all loved him. You know, that thing, you forgive people because you love them and you let them give them another chance. So, but of course, band leader, Pete King, Stan, I want to talk to you in here in the office. I got the bollocking.
Sure. I
got it. Keep your band, it's your band, keep them in order. I don't want to see that. You know, I got told, and you think, well, the next time he might not hire me.
Yeah, sure.
I learned something about being a band leader, why band leaders get a bad name sometimes. You know, they drop people out of the band or they change things. They don't. Hey, you always used to hire me. Why haven't you hired me? Well, because you behave badly. You eventually realise you can't deal with that pressure. You just want people, you want to know that they're going to be on the stage at a certain time without you having to running around checking them. Fellas, these are the set times, be on the stage.
Exactly,
You just you grow up and be responsible for yourself. And that was a big lesson. So because I like everybody else, I used to moan about band leaders. Oh, they'll all give you our time. And, you know, if you're 5 minutes, 10 minutes late, why are they shouting at me and all that? But then I realised when you're the one that's dealing with it, you know.
Then you understand,
different thing, and you're trying to get the gig, and then, you know, people come back, oh, the money's terrible, and like, yeah, it's the best I could get or something, you know, and you feel guilty, or
exactly.
Or the gig goes down and there's no money, and where's the cancellation fee, and it's in a massive amount of added pressure, you know, that very, very, very difficult to deal with. So it's not so. And I watched, funny enough, I remember sitting at Ronnie's watching Horace Silver's band. He used to do Ronnie's quite a lot with the quintet, you know. And, in fact, I was working opposite. I think I was playing with Kenny Baldock. That's right. But an English bass player called Kenny Baldock, who's dead now. Great, lovely Ken. This is a quartet. We were doing the second band in between sets. And it was the band with Larry Schneider, great tenor player.
Yeah, love him. Yeah.
Billy Cobham was playing drums before he was known, and I can't remember the others. A very good trumpet player who's sort of disappeared now, as they do, you know. Anyway, he had this band. So I'm gone into the office behind the stage, getting ready to go on when they finished. They'd just come off, and Horace has got his band in the band room. He's got the front line, and he's okay. I've told you, you want to play long solos, get your own band. In this band, you do this, you do that.
Oh,
and they're all stood like that because it's a regular job.
Yeah, sure.
You do what you're told. And like the bass player plays figures, you know, do all those things with Horace. Good bass player, but he didn't deviate like guys now just sort of, I can't wait to go all over the place. This is the gig. The gig is you play that. This is Horace, my band. This is what you do. And they sort of do it because that's the job, or leave.
Sure. That's heavy.
It's not that I want to be like that. I never want to be a dictator. I don't like dictating. I think you hire people and get them to play how they want to play is the best. But nevertheless, there's that sense of duty about this is what we're doing, you know, and you realise, which is what I've sort of tried to do. Maybe I was lucky and got a lot of work because I was very good at like John Taylor said, interpreting. This is what the band is. This is what the music is. You know, learning how to play that. So,
Yeah.
and when I came up to getting towards 40s, I mean, I always loved people playing standards and tunes. I mean, my collection, I had a collection of 78 records. You know, Stan Getz records and all that, and all the classic history of jazz. And you know, my interests went back as well as forward. As I got older, I wanted to learn about Louis Armstrong or Fletcher Henderson and all that. You know, I started to realise how wonderful it all was, and I learned all this stuff. And I was a terrible tunes player, standards player. I mean, I could play all the notes to fit chords, but that's not it, you know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I went back to getting lessons. You know, people say to me, "You don't." I said, "No, I do. I need some help." A very good guitar player, Phil Lee, fantastic guitar player, gave me some fantastic lessons learning about line creation, about key, how to work with keys. So I started to try and learn how to. I thought I really want to understand and play this better. And I don't think of myself as a great tunes player now, but I do lots of gigs where I endlessly go out and play gigs where I play standards or write or do arrangements and change. But I came at it sort of later on and trying to learn about it, you know. So you're always trying to broaden the things that you can do. I can play that, I can read, I can do a bit of this, I can do that. And that was sort of my world, really. That's how I kind of survived through it all.
How did you learn the compositional process? I mean, you know, you wrote so many nice tunes. Like I found out about you through that record Jigsaw you did, like, you know, the US record, and there's like beautiful tunes like that, Maudley, the 7/4, and Figurine, the ballad, like beautiful melodies and stuff, and like that last tune, like Ornettish one, no discussion, I think. No discussion. It's cool. But how did you learn to write, or how do you usually write? When what's your process?
All right. Well, when so I mean, when I came out, first of all, I didn't write anything when I first appeared on sound. I wasn't like, you know, a lot of young jazz players now through colleges. I mean, I'm teaching at the academy and the Guildhall. What they do is write. You know, they all do. They all write there. Well, I didn't write anything. One, I was terrified of the idea of writing. Was like, oh, there's these special people that write. It was like players. You know, they're sort of up there, and certainly not even doing arranging. You know, because the skill and the writing. I came up through that era. But what I did do eventually, when I had this quartet with John Taylor, it meant I got at that time with the BBC, you would get maybe 2 or 3 broadcasts a year, half hour. So it'd be Jazz Club, which was you play 4 tunes with chat in between. It had to be of that format with an announcer. That was live on Sunday nights. And then there were various things called Jazz in Britain, or various things, various forms of that program, which was a pre-recorded program on Radio 3. Or the third program, as it was called originally, not Radio 3, and but that was with Charles Fox, was the announcer, very famous English announcer, lovely man, very knowledgeable. Anyway, he did this kind of serious, because that was the classical radio station, set the radio, you know. So that meant you had to write another 4 tunes. So ostensibly, there was an excuse for writing 8 tunes a year. I mean, you could go on to Jazz Club and play standards if you want.
Yeah, sure.
So that was the sort of like a motivation, being driven to do something. Right, you've got a broadcast, you could write some tunes. Oh, right, yeah, okay. So I started to do some things, just sat at a piano and fiddled with some stuff. Oh, that sounds nice, you know, is a chord or something. Yeah, and I write something off of that, and, you know, trying to think melody and lines and sing something through, play it, write it down. And the thing is, there was a deadline on them. That's what I found was always good, a deadline. It's throughout, that helps, for me, the process. So that's why I create deadlines. If I haven't got one, I'll just spend a load of money and make a record or a record or something, so that at some point something has to be finished. There's loads of people that write stuff and it's never finished. People are really capable, but it's not finished yet, man. I said, why not? Well, they haven't got anything. But if it's got to be done on June the 13th, it's got to be played. It has to be finished.
You need tunes,
So I had these broadcasts, which meant I wrote 4 tunes. So by the end of the year, you've written 8 new tunes. For the next 2 years, you've got 16 tunes. If you see what I mean. And then you might think one of them, I've got an extra broadcast. Oh, you can write for a slightly bigger band. So, I'll try and writing for a few horns, you know. So I did a little bit of that, but I never wrote anything big until I was nearly coming up to 40, maybe about 37. And I've been playing, I can't tell you how many big bands I played in my life.
Sure. I can believe you.
On the radio and light music ones and all millions of big bands, you know. So I never wrote anything. I asked a few people. I spoke to Alan Ganley, English drummer, who's a wonderful writer. He's passed away now. He used to play with Tubby Hayes, but he was a great writer. That was a sweet guy. He said, "Oh no," he said, "Come on, just get yourself a book, buy this book." And so he didn't want to teach. No, I don't teach. He said, "You'll be, just go into it, you know." There's another guy called Dick Walter that you would know, that all the musicians did a lot of stuff, very knowledgeable. And he just said, "No," he said, "you come, you know it, or you just do it." You know, I'm thinking, no, I need help. You know, I couldn't find anybody that would sort of sit me down in a room and say, I wanted someone to sit some paper in front of me and say, do this and do that. So anyway, what happened was I joined this band called the London Jazz Orchestra, which was basically a rehearsal band. That's all it was, a rehearsal band that was going to run on a Friday morning in a place called the Premises, which is a rehearsal studio. It's in London, run by Scott Stroman and Noel Langley. Scott Stroman was the head of the jazz at the Guildhall School of Music at the time. So in this band, believe this or believe this not, was Ken Wheeler, John Taylor, me, Tim Garland, Paul Clarvis, I think he was the drummer. He was the second for a while. The first drummer was Ralph Salmons, who does loads of TV work and stuff. He was and there's a load of great players, Henry Lowther, you know. And the idea was that we got together and rehearsed music. So it was like the true rehearsal band. There was no. You
could try out things and
try things out. There wasn't. It didn't have to be for anything. So you try it out. You don't like it. You bin it. You know. So it's a workshop band. And slowly it changed. Ken drifted off because he's busy, and it was, you know, and John drifted off, and it was difficult to get to. This wasn't an easy place to get to for everybody, and I kept going. And then people said, well, you know, if you're in the band, you're invited to write. So that's where I wrote my very first arrangement for a big band. It was, and I didn't know what to do. I thought, what am I going to do? You know, you could do that, you could do that, you could do that. There's nobody to tell you. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So it's ridiculous. So I swear to you, this is what I did. There was a what we call a fake book, a busking book called The Source, a printed book of thousands of tunes. And it was Colin Lazzarini, who ran Loose Tubes. He was their sort of manager. Guitar player. He made like a fake book. It's like buying the real book, but an English, you know, an illegal book really, of just thousands of tunes. So I thought, I know what I do. And I swear to you, this is true. I opened the book, right, with a pin, closed my eyes. I opened the book and went, ding, put a pin. I thought, well, I'll see what it lands on, you know, and that's the one I'm going to do. I'm going to do an arrangement of that, you know. I went, ding, and it was The Thrill Is Gone, which is a lovely tune. I think Chet Baker, you know. Because I had a look at it to have a look, see. I thought, oh yeah, it looks sort of nice. A lot of changes, slightly bluesy sort of tinge to it a bit there. I could put a vamp in there, I could put a pedal tone there, you know. And so I did this arrangement of The Thrill Is Gone, and which people still like nowadays. They still like to play it, you know. I've even sold a few copies, and it's very basic in a way, simple. I mean, the idea has got counterpoint lines and stuff, but a few of the things that I wanted to try and do, and you did it all by hand, no Sibelius.
Sure, of course,
So I can remember sitting up at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to finish the parts, you know, and you make a mistake, and with the Tipex, out, sticking a bit of paper, you miss 3 bars out, you know, all that stuff. And you turned up with your eyes hanging out on Friday morning, you know, but okay, fellas, this is a bit, you're terrified because everyone's going to play it, you know, and you go, you know.
That's so funny.
Anyway, everybody, hey, great, Stan, well done, lovely, you know. So it started. So then I did that. I did another one and a couple more, and eventually I had about 5 or 6 arrangements. And it was coming up to my, so I've been doing this band for nearly 10 years, you know. And it was coming up to my 50th birthday. Was it? Yeah, it was my 50th birthday. So I put on a charity gig, you know, with loads of people. So I had a big band, so all my friends and Derek Watkins, a great trumpet player, studio players. I said, do you want to come? But yeah, we do a night, you know, at the Vortex, the original Vortex Jazz Club. So I had enough music to do one set. So big band, one set. The other set was going to be small groups, and Gordon Beck coming around as trio, which is fantastic. And Steve Arguelles and, you know, people could play. And all the money went to Great Ormond Street, which is a famous children's hospital in this country, where they do lots of research and look after children. It's a very famous place. So I phoned them up, and yes, this is what you have to do, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of protocol we have to go through. Made a charity night. So, of course, it sold out, you know, it was a packed room. And I did the very first set where I did a whole set of my music, my tunes, and got it all played by a great band.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, so now you've got a set, but if you've got one set, you can make 2 sets.
Yeah, sure.
And then Paul Clarvis wanted to record it. Paul Clarvis had a record label called Village Life. So I put up the money and we went into this incredibly good studio called Angel Studios, which cost me a fortune. I sold a very expensive handmade flute to raise the money. I mean, really expensive flute. I'd had it made, especially, but I wasn't using it. Anyway, cut a long story short, I had the money and Paul put in loads and loads of money. And we made this record called Birthdays.
Yeah.
Great record, nice record, Derek and Kenny's on it. And, and that was the first album I made. So it's like an achievement. I've started from, writing one little piece and they're taking it along to a place. So it's deadlines and to make it. And then, then you get to enough to make a set and enough to make 2 sets. And you've got enough to make a record. And if you've got enough to make a record, you've probably got enough tunes or do a gig. You've got enough to do a tour. So the next thing, we tried to put a tour together, which we did. And we didn't get the Arts Council money we wanted. We got some money from Performing Rights Society. Yeah. Tiny bit from the Arts Council, somebody else chipped in a bit. Somehow or other, we cobbled all this money together, and I got a gig on the London Jazz Festival, which was the big one, to sort of pay some of the money. And I don't think I took anything out of it. I couldn't care less. It wasn't about the money. I could earn money playing rubbish music in the studios.
Sure.
I could do this tour. So I did that, and off I went. And with this great band, I had a load of fun. So so that's the thing, isn't it? All those things, band leader. You're now not a quartet you're running. You're now trying to run 18 people.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So all of a sudden they got a tour coming, or the night before the gig. Oh man, I've got this thing. I've got to get off. I can't do that. So at the 11th hour, you're trying to find a bass trombone player, or you're ringing around. Everybody's working. Oh, I mean, I can't tell you. I'm tearing my hair out. Because you don't have enough money to hold. Quite understandably, everybody's they got families and lives, and sometimes they have to go, and you've got your lovely, organised, well-made thing, and all of a sudden something put a dent in it, to go
bing,
and you've got to fix it somehow, And of course, musicians are incredibly good at doing all that, but of course, and I'm a nervous, anxious person by nature. I get very wound up and nervous, and so I had to learn to deal with it, stress of it, really stress. Of course, I don't regret a minute of any of it. I loved it, the whole thing. Making that record, I spent fortunes of money, which we never saw. So it was exactly the right thing to do, and I've got that thing on my shelf, and I'm very proud of it, and I give it loads of people about it. So it's like been a very expensive calling card, and it's all those things have held me in good stead. But that's coming at it from that point of view. I mean, I was very fortunate somehow I could always find a way to do it. It's different nowadays. Everybody's looking to try and how do you get that Arts Council grant? How do you
completely changed
to do that, and if you don't know how to fill the forms properly, if you don't tick all the boxes. You may have the most fantastic piece of music. I mean, I fell foul of it. I didn't realise. I thought just having something good and it's got to tick all these boxes. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? So everybody has to go through all these hoops now to try and do it.
It's
to make
way different. Yeah.
It's different. It's tough in a different way. So.
Yeah, it's funny because you actually did it. From the late 60s. When we started our talk, like you said, being on a cruise ship to, now how times and the industry have changed immensely. So for you, it's probably really interesting and romantic in a way to see this, how it's changed.
It's remarkable. I was just talking to, there's a Guildhall, an academy student. I teach at both Guildhall and the academy. But there's an academy student, Sean Payne, who's a great young saxophone player. I mean, there's loads of great saxophones. They're coming out of the woodwork, but he's a really very very, very strong, very good player. And he took a year in Erasmus, what they call Erasmus here. You get
sure. I know it.
At the moment, of course, with our stupid Brexit thing, which of course we're all disgusted with. All musicians hate it. We hate our government, but let's not go there. But one of the other thing, apart from not being able to, it's breaking down being able to move freely and stuff. But of course, Erasmus has gone. It's done it which is like the most incredibly stupid, ridiculously negative So Sean is one of the last to go. So he's out there, and we keep in touch. Although he'd be back next year. So I was teasing him a little bit here, and so we keep in touch on Zoom like this, you know. And I don't chat to see what he's doing in Cologne. So and you realise that he's a young guy, you know, he's like 19, 20, that age. And I said, it's fantastic you're in Cologne. So he's made a lot of friends there already. He's playing some gigs. But I said, that's going to hold you in such fantastic stead later on. It's no good a thing in England. You've got to leave here. You can't. I mean, I love England. I'm an Anglophile, but as a workplace, you can't think England. You've got to go out.
Broaden up, yeah.
We're not great at looking out after our artists in this country. We're just not. You know, we don't do it very well. So he started. I'm really trying to impress on him how important that this year he's done, how important that will be for him in the future, because he's made all these friends and contacts. So he's now knows people in Germany or there, wherever. And that's what young people have to do. Or there's people that still up and go to New York. I know there was a wonderful woman saxophone player called Rachel Cohen, who's from Shetland Islands, actually right in the north of England. And she went to Birmingham Conservatoire, and I heard her play there. She plays great, and she's around, done some albums now in London. But I saw that she went, I don't know if she's permanently there, but she was living in New York. She went there for a couple of years.
That's right, yeah.
Phil Robson, great English guitar player, he went there with Christine Tobin.
Yeah, sure. Phil, I know, yeah.
Phil Donking, great bass player. He's now in Berlin, I think.
He's in Berlin, in New York. Yeah.
So everybody leaves. I have to go somewhere bigger, you know. And that's how they did it. I mean, the mistake I made in 1967, I was what we call in English, I was very green. I was a very green child. I knew nothing about anything. I didn't know anything about, when I went to New York, I knew nothing about racism or any of that stuff, you know, but I'm talking around in 1967 was the race riots.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I was down in the, you know, into Harlem. I went with a bass player, a friend of mine, Scottish bass player, and we offered, let's go out to Holland. We're all you know, and we're wandering around, and there's everybody out in the streets, you know, in that boiling hot sun.
Yeah.
And we're sort of wandering around, and there's sort of people looking at us, obviously like, what the hell are you doing here? This is, you know. And anyway, started to speak. So I went up and said, excuse me, you couldn't tell me where. They're sort of laughing because they hear this funny accent. I mean, they weren't used to hearing London.
Yes, sir.
A young kid with a Cockney accent. All right, mate, I'm from London. I said, I'm from London. I'm a jazz fan. I go, you're a jazz fan? Yeah. And we started asking, you know, oh, go here. They started looking after us. So, but in this total innocence of not understanding anything about it, I didn't know anything about drugs.
Yeah, sure.
In my life, you know, I didn't know what it looked like. I had no idea what any of it was. And so in your innocence, I mean, you learn a lot. You learn a lot. It was pretty decadent shit, but I got on it as a very green young kid. I had no idea about how to make a future in my life. Nobody taught me anything about education.
Yeah, sure.
I left school when I was 15. You know, I didn't know nothing about the idea of going to a college or how to get lessons. So I never asked for any lessons when I was in New York. I never said to any of these people I met, can I come and get a lesson?
Yeah.
Nobody ever said to me, you know, there's a college that you could try and get to Berkeley, and you could apply for a grant or try in England, or I just didn't know. It's not anybody's fault. It's my own kind of. When I look back,
but it's different times. It was different times. Yeah.
Kind of strange stupidity. I didn't know anything about it. So when I look back, I really thought what I should have done was done what other people did. Stayed in, because I had a green card because I was a seaman. I've been on the boat. I had a card made. You know, I had to sign on as a seaman, not as a musician. I had to have a special card and immigration thing. So I probably could have got a card to stay on there, spent a year or a couple of years there and done something, you know. But I had no idea. I was just clueless.
Yeah, but you know, you still did it, and you know, it's like you did amazing stuff. I mean, come on, it's.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just hindsight, isn't it? You know, hindsight.
Yeah, but if you think about it,
hindsight is a dangerous thing, and you do what you do, and you know, I've been very lucky, and I've done all kinds of things that I'm very lucky to have done, and very proud and privileged to have done. But you know, you can't help but think, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have done that, you know, because I didn't know. But that's the difference now with the young students and people I teach now. You know, they're much more savvy.
Yeah, it's different times. Yeah. The information also and all that. Yeah,
they don't. I mean, my aspirations when I was 15 and sort of got this job after I got off the boat wasn't to be a jazz musician. I was just to be a musician.
Yeah,
that's as a musician, that when I did whatever people paid me to do, I went and played in ballet bands.
Yeah, sure.
I had no idea about being a jazz musician. That's what other people did. That's what Joe Henderson did, or Tubby Hayes, these Ronnie Scott. I mean, because Ronnie Scott was a fantastic tenor player.
Yeah, sure.
Forget that. He was one of my favourites, actually, Ronnie. But these were like gods to me. They did something that was so special. I had no idea about the idea that you could actually maybe go and do something approaching that, or be part of that world, wasn't in my experience.
Yeah.
So I sort of learnt about that later on. But nowadays, people have got much more idea about a sense of direction.
Completely different, yeah.
What they're going to do, and they know about looking for grants or to go here or work there, and you can get teaching jobs. So if they need colleges with good qualifications, their first rung is maybe try and find a little job teaching somewhere, which gets you a chance to
make a living. Sure, true. Cool, Stan. Wow, man, that's such a story you have. So, thanks so much for sharing some of it, at least. So,
no, thank you for sitting talking. So you should send me something where you're playing and everything then.
I'll send you some links. Yeah, I've done like so many. I played a lot with Julian Arguelles. If you probably know Julian.
Right, yeah. Oh, Julian's fantastic.
We did a lot, and I played with so many. I'll send you. I've done like tons of albums, and yeah.
Oh well, I'd love to have some of that. Yeah, because I mean, the last couple of years, just before I know we both need to finish actually. I play a little bit. I started to play before the lockdown with Vane. That trio from Switzerland.
Vane, yeah, sure. I know those guys. Yeah.
I met them by chance because somebody dropped out. I couldn't do a tour here, and I was suggested as a dep, so I got to know them a bit, and I ended up doing. I would have been doing a tour the first year of the pandemic, but it all got cancelled. We were doing a little 5-day tour here, so I've just made a virtual big band album with them.
Really? How beautiful.
For doing it for the Alsace. They did all the rhythm section from Switzerland, and all the rest of us blow us me. It's nearly finished.
Beautiful.
I'm going to put a video. I'll send when it's done. There'll be a video link to a YouTube.
Please send me.
I'll send it to you. But I mean, so I've met people like that, that I would never ever have met.
It's funny these times. Yeah, this pandemic in a way also started cooperating. I did like a record with Francois Oulet, the Canadian clarinet player, like long distance, and lots of other stuff, which in normal times I would probably not do, because you invite people over and you play and do a studio, but now we just had to improvise in a way. So
you have to do it any way you can,
just to be creative at least. So yeah. But
okay,
Stan, thank you so much. I hope to see you somewhere in the road. If you're like in Europe, on the continent, let me know, please.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.